It's been a whole 2 months since the iPhone 16 Pro Max released, and look, it's been okay. Now, there's some things that the iPhone is very good at. Its video capabilities are second to none, it's got a pretty solid set of shooters, and its performance is kind of untouchable. I mean, you can shoot in log, you can record directly to an SD card or an SSD, and you can play demanding games like Warzone Mobile with no issues, and in terms of its hardware, it's among some of the best. So I've had this in my pocket for the last 2 months as either a primary device or second to the Pixel 9 Pro, and over the last 2 months I've picked up some things that I not only really like about the 16 Pro Max, but some things that I absolutely can't stand. And one of those things is in the car, so come with me. This is one of those things. Okay, not Apple CarPlay directly, but Apple Intelligence and how it's integrated into Apple CarPlay. Send a text to Dylan and ask him how he's going.
Which app do you want?
Like, okay. Send a text to Dylan.
What do you want to...
How? It just cut out there. Send a text to Dylan.
What do you want to...
The weather is up, the sky is down. How are you doing? Are you falling down?
It says, what?
And then, like, I don't even know if the message is correct.
Okay, canceled.
Okay. Like, how am I supposed to know if the message is correct if it can't even read it back to me? But then here's this, right? Give me directions to the mall.
One possibility.
It just cuts out. It doesn't continue talking. And like, this is a plaza. This is not even a mall. But it's not all negative. For example, being able to see social media notifications straight from the app on my MacBook and be able to mirror my iPhone on my Mac is a nice way of keeping distractions down. I find myself no longer reaching for the phone to respond to an important notification, only to find myself being entertained by brain rot content for an hour when I really should be doing editing. And also, no, I didn't get robbed or anything. My office is kind of in shambles because I'm in the process of moving to a new studio. So if you want to see content around that, just go ahead, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to leave post notifications on so you get updated when I upload these videos. But yeah, it's kind of barren right now. Anyways, in the last 2 months, I've taken the 16 Pro Max on a road trip to Massachusetts and Vermont, all the way from Toronto, and it's been with me whilst building out the studio, and it's been in my pocket for a various amount of reasons, despite some preference toward the Pixel. So I guess to start, how has it held up? The 16 Pro Max is quite a durable phone. I don't always use a case because sometimes it can be troublesome when filming if I need to remove it and put it somewhere so I don't misplace it, and then I have to remember to put the case back on. And I also don't use a screen protector. I used to, but since I've been filming outside, I use an ND filter for my camera, and it makes the display super dim and it causes fringing. And I know I said I don't always use a case, but when I do, it's Spigen. This video is actually brought to you by Spigen, and since the iPhone 14 Pro, I've been using the 01. It's a really high quality, great feeling teardown case, and it's made with this really unique dual layered double printing technique that gives it sort of a 3D effect. I've always been a fan of how it makes the phone look, whether you get the white natural titanium or the black 01. It's always been a very outgoing and technical case that just screams me, so when I use a case, this is what I opt for. However, there's a new kid on the block, the Neo 1, and both these cases come with MagFit for MagSafe accessories. Both are high quality, durable, great in the hand. I think Spigen's got a little competition going on internally because even the box they sent over is basically asking me to pick a side with hashtag Neo1 or hashtag 01. And I have to say, despite my love for the 01, the new minimalistic approach of the Neo 1 really elevates the look and makes it much more striking in my opinion. So sorry 01, but I think I'm gonna have to make the switch. Let me know down below in the comments which one you like more, and if you're interested, I'll put a link to the 01 and the Neo 1 in the description down below. So thank you Spigen for sponsoring this video. Anyways, the 16 Pro Max though is made out of grade 5 titanium, and it's sandwiched between Apple's newer ceramic shield. As far as the back glass and the sapphire camera lens housing and those titanium side rails go, the phone is in mint condition. It's taken a couple of drops on tile and on hardwood, and I had it on my lap while getting out of the car, and I did drop it on the pavement, but you wouldn't even be able to tell. Like, the phone is in really good shape. On the display side though, there is a ton of micro scratches. Now, this might actually be pretty hard to pick up with the camera, and you only really notice it in direct lighting. I honestly just expected this display to be a little bit more resistant to scratching, considering this is a newer ceramic shield. But, and don't quote me on this, I believe the harder and more like shatter resistant the glass actually is, the more prone it is to getting those scratches. So luckily, I have seen some people online scratching the actual back glass of the phone. That hasn't happened to me, but there are some pretty sizable, you know, micro scratches on the front display. So like, it's not noticeable, but deep down I know it's there and it does kind of hurt, but I can't do anything about it. And one of the new things this year, camera control. I do not use it at all. It's cool. I like the hardware behind it. It's nice. It's intuitive, sort of. And the haptics, plus the button press, and the fact that you can slide your finger up and down to control it and change the settings is really cool. But it's become exclusively a camera launch shortcut for me. For me, with smaller hands, it's just not that comfortable to use. And I said sort of to it being intuitive because honestly, I think the way it works is nice and it's fluid, but in practice, it's kind of a pain. Like, it's easier to just press what I want on the display rather than having to use camera control. Now, this is also supposed to do visual intelligence, and I am on the latest update, and I don't exactly understand why it isn't here. It just might be the fact that I'm in Canada and the rollout hasn't happened yet. But yeah, like half of this button's feature set for me just doesn't exist, so it does feel pointless. I will say that I do think it's quite annoying. I mean, I understand Apple advertised this and other Apple Intelligence features as launching at a later date, but this to me just feels like a letdown since Apple Intelligence as a whole is one of the biggest selling points for the iPhone 16 series. I just look at other devices like the Pixel or the S24 Ultra, which have Gemini Advanced. Like, they're easier to use, they're quicker, and pretty much seamless, but all I really have is this ChatGPT integration into Siri, and it's so slow to get a response from. This is an area where I definitely do feel like the iPhone is bottlenecked, and I think unfortunately going to get left in the dust whether you like it or not, or care about AI. The fact that this just isn't complete and it has been hindering things that I use, like Apple CarPlay, has been making this Apple Intelligence integration into the 16 Pro Max, for me, feel like more of a pain in the ass than something that is actually supposed to be useful. Though, can we just talk about this display for a moment? Anytime I pick up pretty much any device and come back to the iPhone, I'm reminded at how large this display is and how tight the edges are thanks to those slimmer bezels. This is a 6.9-inch screen in a form factor that really isn't much larger than the 15 Pro Max. It feels way more immersive, and it also, for the first time on an iPhone, in my opinion, feels leaps ahead of some of the devices that we have here in North America. I also think that it's just a really good display. It punches well above its 2000 nit peak when outdoors. It's got a pixel density of 460 ppi, so it's sharp despite the larger size, and the Super Retina XDR OLED is fantastic. There's perfect colors, stunning contrast. It really is just a good display for consuming content. And because it is 120 Hz and has the new A18 Pro SoC, in titles that support it, the extra power could bring you really smooth performance in even the most demanding titles at 120 Hz. Now that Warzone Mobile has the Black Ops 6 update, I've actually been playing it quite a bit and it handles it great. There's no issues with overheating, and I personally don't notice any throttling, and the phone doesn't get too warm. It's honestly just a good experience. Now, not a 16 Pro problem in general, but I will say this. Dynamic Island is annoying for playing games and watching content. It does take up a lot of the screen real estate, and though I do understand that this is because of the Face ID sensor, I am hoping that we can see this shrink or be eliminated completely soon. I can't believe that I'm saying this, but I think I'm at the point where I would much rather just have Touch ID than have this there at all. Like, I think a hole punch camera plus Touch ID would probably be the next step if Apple can't continue to shrink or get rid of this. But at the same time, this is a problem because now Dynamic Island has kind of become like a marketing point and a gimmick on these phones, and it makes them super recognizable. This is like an area where marketing is kind of hurting innovation, and it's kind of annoying. Now, as for the battery on the 16 Pro Max, it's actually been exceptional. I feel like this is the first iPhone that I've said this about, but I'm blown away with how it's held up. Some updates, it feels a little weaker, like when iOS 18 had just rolled out, but some time has passed and it's not been an issue. With about 4 hours of screen on time, I can get 2 days out of the phone and charge for my next morning in the car. This is also with the always on display enabled, and I found myself enjoying the always on display for the first time on any phone, and mainly because there's almost no battery drain. There was a night that I unplugged at 100% and I woke up to 99% after an 8-hour sleep, which is just like actually insane. So like I said, 4 hours a day out of those 2 days, that's 8 hours of screen on time across 2 whole days of use. And I have zero complaints about that. For me, that is more than enough. However, there has actually been a really annoying issue that I've been facing with the iPhone, and that comes down to the reception. Like I said, I'd been working on the new studio, trying to get it finished, but when I'm down there, the iPhone straight up doesn't receive or make calls. The Pixel, on the other hand, no problem. And I'm not sure why it seems like every year the iPhone struggles with its network. And I mentioned this in a Pixel video, and people asked why I didn't just have Wi-Fi calling enabled. I don't have Wi-Fi down there yet, so I can't use Wi-Fi calling. It's like we live in this age where we almost forget that not everywhere has internet, so you can't just rely on Wi-Fi features. But yeah, it's become a serious problem for me. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but I have temporal lobe epilepsy and stuff, and I was trying to contact my neurologist. I couldn't get through. And then I also missed a call from my neurologist after actually trying to schedule and make an appointment. And that's because I was down there working for the last few days. Yeah, like it genuinely can be quite annoying. Sometimes though, I also just do feel like the iPhone is lying about its network and signal integrity. Like 2 or 3 bars, I should be able to have a decent service, especially on 5G. But I find in a lot of cases, apps or web pages just don't load, and they just continue to load endlessly with nothing feeling like it's happening in the background. And it's the same network, same plan, same everything that I've been using with the Pixel. Whether I swap SIMs or I just use my different SIM in general, it's the same problems across the board. And I have used iPhones on other networks like premium carriers and stuff, and I don't notice a difference. But look, signal issues could be many things. Like I said, it depends on the location, it depends on the network, it depends on a actual physical problem with the SIM slot. There's so many things that can go into it. All I'm saying is that from my experience, the reception on the iPhone has actually been kind of terrible, which is a really big 180 to my first impressions with the phone, because I initially said that I had no real complaints and that it actually seemed like it improved, because in here in this basement apartment, my service has been perfectly fine, but I find in other areas which I go to frequently now, it's become sort of a problem. Though, lately for me, the iPhone's become more of a glorified video camera and stills cam when I want to take images, especially when I know that I want to edit them. And the 48 megapixel sensor on the iPhone is really good. It's sharp, it handles low lit scenes very well, it has good contrast, dynamic range, and so on. It's one of the better cameras out there. And I've also really been appreciating the 48 megapixel ultra wide. Though if you're going to be utilizing the ultra wide, you need to shoot in the HEIF max or RAW mode to get the full sensor output, or your images are just going to be 12 or 24 megapixels, which is why people think that it's not as big of a difference between the 15 Pro Max. But they look really good, and I won't lie, it actually really did impress me. When I took images on my trip, I was surprised at how much I was able to push them in Lightroom. I did some really big edits and not only handled Lightroom like a champ on the 16 Pro Max, but the images came out really nice as well. The only gripe that I have with the camera layout, especially since being spoiled by the Pixel, I'm upset that the 5x telephoto is only a 12 megapixel sensor. I think this is to combat low light, since it has a lower f-stop at f2.8, but 12 megapixels, it doesn't really give you a lot to work with. I mean, it would be nice to crop in further without taking a huge loss to detail, and theoretically, a 48 megapixel telephoto could give you a pretty sharp 10 times optical zoom. Digital zoom, not optical zoom. But it would be pretty nice to have. Though I think the video where the iPhone is where the iPhone really shines. Even if you aren't taking full advantage of the iPhone and shooting in the auto mode with the default camera app, it's still, in my opinion, the best smartphone camera for video on the market. I'm also a huge fan of Apple including a 120 FPS feature, since there's no hit to the quality of the image, and I do find it genuinely useful, and it's super cool for unique shots. Like, the video has been a reason alone to keep this thing in my pocket. Like, being able to take take these photos and videos while I'm on the go in apps like Instagram with no loss to the actual quality is also a really nice thing. And as someone who lives and works on social media, it's kind of important. Oh, and by the way, like I said, Instagram, X and stuff like that, follow me there. It's at valismind. Thank you. Now, I do want to briefly mention something here. I feel like everyone's opinion on the iPhone is that it just works, and take what I say with a grain of salt because I simply just cannot recreate on demand to capture it on video. But in iOS 18, my 16 Pro Max has been a bug-filled nightmare. For starters, I've had this issue pop up 3 times now where it seems like the display is just not actually registering a touch, and I can't restart the phone because when I actually push and hold to restart, I get this slide to power off, and I can't slide to power it off. I can't do anything about it. I just have to wait until it works. And one day it took me like 30-40 minutes, but I was out and I didn't have the Pixel on me to record it, and I'm super upset about it because I thought it was actually just insane. And aside from that, I've had pretty consistent issues with apps just like crashing or not loading. And it's become a problem to the point where, like, I don't know if I would actually want to rely on the 16 Pro Max to be my personal daily driver. I don't know what it is. Like, the iPhone, yeah, it had bugs before. It was never this bad. It always seemed pretty consistent. Lately, it's just not really been a good experience. Now, there's also another thing where in some apps, it doesn't seem like the iPhone is running at 120 hertz. Like, I have a 175 hertz monitor. The laptop over there, the ROG, is a 240 hertz display. I've used a 480 hertz monitor. I used to play competitive CSGO. I was supreme in the game. I actually was a nerd. I know what refresh rate is like and what it feels like and how it should be. And on the iPhone, it just doesn't feel like 120 hertz. I feel like this is something that Apple's doing to kind of save battery life. I feel like they're limiting it to around 80 or 90. Kind of annoying. Like, I paid for promotion. I paid for 120 hertz. Just let me use it. The battery is already insane on this phone. Let me just have my promotion full tilt working across the board. But yeah, it's something that I've seen and honestly just isn't something that I really appreciate. Though aside from the small quirks that pop up from time to time, I really do think that this is a good phone. This is the first time in many years that I've actually been mostly positive about an iPhone, and although it might not be the most exciting looking or fresh feeling device, borrowing everything from the last handful of years of iPhone design, it's fine. Solid cameras, great display, amazing build quality, and realistically best in class performance. The 16 Pro Max has held up well and is a solid choice for people who want to upgrade. Just pick up the phone, get a case, get a screen protector, hopefully from Spigen, just kidding. And also just get a bottle of bug spray. I don't know, maybe that'll fix the problem. I do think though that if you're American, you won't have as many gripes or issues that I do, since you'll have a majority of the Apple Intelligence features already being rolled out, and the phone will feel like a much more new and polished experience. But if you're anywhere else in the world, you're kind of SOL because it just doesn't really feel like it's ready yet. Like, this isn't the product that we were intended to have, at least not until Apple Intelligence is fully rolled out. So if you enjoyed this one, and thank you, by the way, for putting up with this kind of half-assed video. I really do appreciate your support, and thank you all so much for just making this like a reality and making it happen. And by the way, if you've watched this entire video, drop an alligator emoji down in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next one, and peace out.